Get your ears wrapped around the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. All the scoop you need to know, from college basketball to the NBA and even March Madness. News of your rising stars, topics on and off the hardwood. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast.
GSMC Basketball Podcast here on the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Brice Lewis. Obviously, today we have a packed show where we really talking all things basketball from college and professional. And, we're going to talk about the latest All-Star reserves that have been released today. We're also going to talk about some news and notes about the league. I like to keep everybody updated on what's going on. Just keep you in the loop around the league in this great association of basketball. After a sad, disappointing start to the week, obviously, we're still giving tributes to Kobe Bryant, but also at the same time, we're also moving forward with a lot of games that have been played recently. Players have returned to the court. Games have gotten feisty. Also, some players may have been snubbed. We're also going to talk about college basketball and the latest net rankings, and a couple of guys who may have committed to committed to the second day of the All-Star Week and all the skill challenges. But like I said, we're going to talk about the All-Star reserves. I'm going to give my thoughts on them. So, the All-Star reserves were released today, so obviously we know the rest of who was voted into the All-Star game. The All-Star draft is set for February 6th, so that's obviously going to be a very interesting dilemma, I think. And, obviously Giannis and LeBron are going to be the two people picking their teams and picking who they want to pick up on the team. So obviously, that's obviously going to be a pretty fun time. Obviously, it's a little fun, interactive thing to do, playing basketball or whatever. But now into the reserves. We're going to start with the Western Conference. In the Western Conference, the reserves is first Dollar Dame Damian Lillard. Damian Lillard has had one of the best seasons, in a while for him. In terms of, Damian Lillard's been good every year, but he's had a great year because he's had to carry the team on his back because of all the injuries to everybody on his team. He's averaging, I think, 50 in his last four. So, clearly this man, Damian Lillard, is doing everything he can to keep Portland in contention and to help them stay in the race for the Western Conference 8th spot, because obviously that's what they're battling for right now, and probably, hopefully, maybe getting potentially over 500 on the season as they beat a very, very game team last night and was able to pick up a good win and moving forward. Donovan Mitchell is the second reserve. Obviously, Donovan Mitchell's had a good year for the Utah Jazz, obviously leading Utah. So just about a couple of days ago, the second seed in the West, now the third seed in the West, they're a team that people think could maybe shock one of the LA teams. They had one of the better defensive teams in the year with the defensive anchor of Rudy Gobert. And Donovan Mitchell is one of the best young players in the game with some great other players like Mike Conley and Bogdanovich and other guys like that could shoot the ball and do a lot of things differently for him. So obviously, Dollar Dame and Speeda have made the team. Rudy Gobert has made the All-Star game. This has been something that people have been waiting for a while because, Rudy Gobert has been one of the best defensive players in the league for so long. And he also has a decent offensive game, and a lot of people feel like the value he adds to his team and what he does for his team on a week-to-week and day-to-day basis. A lot of people felt like he was snubbed last year in the All-Star game. This year he gets in. So I know a lot of people are excited about that. A lot of people are happy that he gets into this game because they feel like that, like I said, last year he should have gotten into the game. And, I guess we won't have another, meme of him crying on Twitter if they're not making it. But, congrats to Rudy Gobert making the team with his teammate Donovan Mitchell. Another player from the Western Conference that made it is Brandon Ingram. Brandon Ingram, he's a guy who's had one of his best years, if not his best year. Well, yeah, it was his best year this year with the Pelicans averaging 25 a game. He's been really the best player in holding this team afloat while Zion's been out. Obviously, we have to see what happens now that Zion has returned, but Brandon Ingram's been one of the best players, had one of his best years, has played one of his best seasons since being in the league. A lot of people thinking maybe, like I said, I don't like saying someone's a bust unless it's like Kwame Brown bust, but he just hasn't played up to maybe the standards you thought he would have played at. But this year he has played up to that standard, and he makes the All-Star team, well deserved. Next is Jokic. Joker, I mean, you know, he's one of the best centers in the game. You would think, why not? Him and Rudy Gobert are obviously battling year after year for the best center in the Western Conference. I'm not surprised with this decision here. I believe he should have made the team, and he has all the potential in the world to be, you know, like I say, one of the top 5 players in the game coming in the years to come, and he just keeps playing well year after year after year. Russell Westbrook makes it. You know, obviously Russell Westbrook, you know, it's Russell. You know, he does a lot of great things. He rebounds, he passes, he scores. You know, especially if he picked up his play a little bit recently with James Harden not being as good as he has been at the beginning of the season. But Russell, you know, you just didn't see an all-star game without Russell Westbrook. There's just some players that you just sometimes feel like they're going to always be there. And Russell's one of those guys you just feel like they're always going to be there. And, you know, this is a very deserving spot for him getting into the all-star game. And last, on the Western Conference side of things, is CP3 Chris Paul. Chris Paul has had a very surprising season to a lot of people. A lot of people thought he was washed up and getting older, but he's actually had one of his better seasons, leading this young Oklahoma City team to the 7th seed, 7-8 games over 500, and he's played very well down the stretch, and they're also one of the most clutch teams in the league, which you would think clutches in Chris Paul's DNA, so it makes sense that one of the teams he plays on is also one of the best teams in the clutch. I think this is obviously very well-deserved for Chris Paul. Obviously, you know, you have the fan vote, but you also have a lot of coaches and players who appreciate Chris Paul and know what they do for him. And now we're going to switch to Eastern Conference reserves, and we're going to talk about Jimmy Butler. He made the team. A lot of people feel like he should have made the team over Trae Young because he had the better team. And they feel like the way that they are now wouldn't be without Jimmy Butler, but he made, obviously, first in reserves. And, you know, so he's going to be in the game. Next, you know, Chris Middleton. This is another all-star bid for Chris Middleton. Chris Middleton has really worked hard to get where he is now. A lot of people felt like he was not going to be where he is now because when he came into the league, he was very raw, like Giannis. And he's really worked himself into being a top all-star player. This guy, you know, he just had a monster night, having 52 the other night. So Chris Middleton is very much deserving to be on this team. I do not dispute this at all. I think he has played very well to be in this position, and he's done everything you want him to do to hope to be in this spot right now. Ben Simmons makes it also. You know, Ben Simmons, obviously, you know, he's Ben Simmons. He gets about 8, 9, 10 assists, about 7, 8 rebounds, about a solid maybe 15, 16 points. You know, he does everything for the team. Especially without Embiid being there, it kind of helped him a little bit because he had some monster games, which might have sided some people on his side from the media and coach and players, which that pushed him into it. We can also sit here and make this argument maybe that, you know, they didn't have enough in terms of just overall players in the game and people on the team. So, you know, that happens. Sabonis gets his first All-Star bid. Sabonis had a great year for the Indiana Pacers. He is an All-Star player. With him and him and Victor Oladipo coming back and playing the other night, I think this is big. Indiana has 2 All-Stars they can build the team around. Sabonis is a guy who is a very skilled big man, shoot the ball, rebound. You know, he does a lot of good things, and I think that's why he's in this position where he is now, where I think this is a very well-deserved All-Star bid, and I'm glad he made the team. Next is Jason Tatum. Obviously, Jason Tatum's had one of his best years. He's only been in the league 3 years. He had his best year since rookie year. And you know, I think the way he's played with Kemba Walker, he's very much deserving of the spot. You know, he's played very well. He's played at a high level. You could say that sometimes the team is carried by him sometimes. And, you know, that's something you can't deny. And I think that really helps him out. You know, he's done a lot for the team in helping Boston have one of the best records in the Eastern Conference. And then next, Kyle Lowry. Obviously, Kyle Lowry, defending champion Kyle Lowry. Kyle Lowry's played very well for him. I mean, listen, some people are going to dispute that Van Fleet is the better point guard between the two, but Kyle Lowry is the starter, and Kyle Lowry plays well. And like I said, a lot of people don't feel like there's a lot of guards in the Eastern Conference, so guys like Kyle Lowry can slide in here, but, you know, he's very much deserved of the spot. And then lastly, Bam Adebayo, first All-Star bid. He's a up-and-coming big man in this league, and now he's an All-Star big man, and it really helps with everything he's doing for the Miami Heat. You know, he's played very well. He's taking the next step. He's getting better year after year, and that's all you really want from your young players like Bam Adebayo and Tyler Hero and guys coming up in the future. So don't be surprised if the Miami Heat have more players down in the future that make the team because of, you know, the future of what's going on around here and et cetera. So that's your All-Star reserves on the both East and Western conferences, and your All-Star lineups are now set for the draft pool. But coming up next, we're going to talk about the Lakers releasing some statements within the organization from different people talking about Kobe's death. Brooklyn with Brooklyn tribute to Kobe when they played the Detroit Pistons as the Nets pick up the victory, and the new All-Star format they have decided to do this year for the NBA All-Star game right here on the podcast.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last segment, I gave my thoughts on the new All-Star reserves that were announced. Obviously, there's some big snubs in there like Devin Booker, Kyrie Irving, Paul George, Bradley Beal. You got a lot of stubs in there, but I'll talk about the snubs later in the show. But I announced the reserves for best West and Eastern All-Stars. So we have our entire All-Star draft pool set up now for the draft that is going to take place with LeBron and Giannis on February 8th, I believe, to be correct. But now we gotta get back to this. This is obviously some more Kobe news. Obviously, if you somehow haven't known yet, Kobe Bryant passed away on Sunday in a horrific helicopter crash on Sunday. Him and 9 other people were killed, including his daughter, Gigi. Very sad day for the league. A lot of people were shocked. It hit the league very hard, and it was just one of those things. It was just crazy. You didn't believe it. You think you were in a bad dream. You didn't. And you just wanted to wake up from it. But obviously, everybody's pouring out a lot of support towards Vanessa Bryant and the family. And she made a post the other day, like yesterday, I believe, talking about how she appreciates all the support and she's very appreciative of all of it in a time of need. And it's very crazy to think that he's not there anymore, but it's going to be okay, and they're just going to take time to themselves and figure out what's next. So that's kind of the big thing there. Obviously, some Lakers from within organizations have gave some statements. Obviously, Jeannie Buss came out, made a statement saying that, it's almost like she lost a family member. Honestly, that's what a lot of people felt like Kobe was for them, was a family member they lost. And obviously, that was obviously a big thing for them. Losing Kobe was big. Rob Pelinka came out. I mean, that Rob Pelinka was Kobe's agent, so he had a very close personal business relationship with Kobe. And he was Kobe's agent for years. And so obviously that was big because, he looked at Kobe as family. He felt he lost like a goddaughter, and he lost a close friend, and obviously Rob Pelinka, people feel like he wouldn't be in this position without Kobe. So Rob Pelinka understands how important it is to have Kobe in his life to get him where he is now. Obviously, losing Kobe was big for him. Like I said, since he was his former agent, a lot of, obviously, if you catch Shaq on TNT when they were supposed to have the Lakers Clippers, but they canceled it. They still had their show, and he gave a very touching, statement, about Kobe and his death, and reminding us, you always want to go out there and reach out because you never know when that person may be gone the next day. So it's very important that you reach out, and Kobe was very important to him, and everybody obviously had their perceptions of Kobe's and Shaq's relationship because of what happened back in the early days. But he's like, nobody really truly knows our relationship like we know our relationship, and it's it's one of those things again where it's just kind of like it's kind of crazy to think about Kobe's gone and everything like that. Like I said, LeBron made a statement. Obviously, LeBron was close to Kobe. Obviously that was the guy, if you were younger, you had those Kobe versus LeBron debates. So he was very much tied to Kobe a lot during his time, really coming up on the rise in the league, where Kobe was kind of already established as an all-star, all-pro. And, you kind of just feel like, with what you've seen from what you saw, you feel like that, obviously that hit him hard. I mean, even in the post, he said he really wasn't 100% ready to have that to make that post, but he made the post because, I'm sure a lot of people were waiting to see what LeBron wanted to say, what LeBron had to say. And, it was one of those things where you just felt like, you feel for everybody who was involved in the situation, who's been a big fan of Kobe, who knows Kobe, played against Kobe, coached against Kobe. Kobe was one of the most fierce, dedicated competitors in the game, and losing him in such a terrible way just really, like I said, impacted the league, impacted a lot of people's lives. And it's one of those things that it was one of the hardest things that has gone through. But we wish everybody the best out there. We wish obviously, like I said, Kobe's family gets all the support they need to get through this trying time in their lives. The Brooklyn Nets actually did a tribute the other night. Obviously, Kyrie played for the first time since Kobe's death. Obviously, very close to Kobe. They did a tribute where they dedicated 2 front row seats. They put flowers in 2 seats in the front row, dedicated to Kobe and Gigi. And it was a great tribute by Brooklyn Nets. They also had a tribute video before the game, which if you've seen the video, you can see Kyrie Irving visibly crying about it. Obviously, like I said, very close to Kobe, very emotional time for him. Losing his mentor, losing a guy, who he's put so much energy and time into, and it was hard for him to, be in that situation. Obviously, like the day of, he had a game when Kobe died, and he didn't play that game because he just couldn't. And even in this game, he was emotional, but he played the game. Even after the game, post-game interview, I applaud the ESPN reporter asking, "Is it okay if I ask you?" Because some reporters, they'll just go right into it and just ask you questions, and you may not even be okay with it. She asked for permission first and said, "Hey, is this okay?" And Kyrie's like, "Yeah, it was okay." And obviously, really, he was trying to talk about it, and he got a little choked up again because, like I said, it's still something that you move on with life, you go into business, you play your game, but at the same time, you never forget the impact that someone has made on your life, and you just won't forget that happened. So I think that it's one of those things where, like I said, Kyrie's going to miss him, but, like I said, at least Brooklyn got the dub that day. Kyrie had a good game and was able to honor Kobe in his first game after. And obviously, like a lot of players say, who's close to Kobe, we're going to try to continue his legacy, like LeBron said too, and try to continue what he has done and what he has done to help make the league as great as it is to this day. Because it's a very, like I said, trying time in the life of a lot of people who play this game, losing Kobe Bryant and losing, the Black Mamba guy, Mr. Bean, it's not easy. And then lastly, they have changed the All-Star format this year. So what they're going to do is, one of the changes they've made is to help honor Kobe Bryant. And basically, they're going to do it where they're going to have the first 3 quarters are kind of like a mini game that whoever wins the quarters will help get money towards going towards a charity. You definitely have that. They also have it in the fourth quarter where you have to score at least 24 points. You have to score at least 24 points. That was another honor to Kobe. And it's going to be an untimed fourth quarter. It's going to be a very untimed fourth quarter, so you won't necessarily even have the time so it can go as long as needed. And I think this is just something they're trying to do to see if this tribute works. Obviously giving back to charity, changing the game, everything like that. I think the thing is that I feel like from what I've seen, people initially aren't really happy about it because they feel like you might as well just keep it known for. Because they said, honestly, all you should do is just make make maybe Eastern Western Conference team, one wears 8, one wears 24, do a little tribute video, stuff like that. You don't need to change the actual game itself and the way it's played. Because it's like, well, then again, what are we playing for? You know, it feels like we're trying to do, because, like, you know, I guess they're playing for charity, which, I mean, is a good cause. I mean, there's nothing bad or wrong with that. It's just kind of like, you know, some people kind of like, is it really necessary? Is it really, you know, needed? You know, things like that. And et cetera. So, you know, we'll have to see how it actually turns out when the game is actually played. And, you know, people are going to look to see what happens. But coming up next, Damian Lillard and Aaron Gordon commits to the three-point contest, and the salary cap is expected to rise from $109 million to $150 million. And I'm giving my thoughts on how this impacts the new latest incoming NBA free agency this offseason right here on the podcast. Stay tuned as we take a quick break.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA, from the UFC to extreme cage fighting. They got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last segment, we talked about some tributes that were done to Kobe, people releasing statements from organizations, from owners, to people who used to play with him, and obviously his agent, Rob Pelinka, a lot of other people obviously talking about the Kobe Bryant unfortunate, you know, passing, you know, and also, we also broke down the new All-Star format that was made as they are trying to do something to show a tribute to Kobe. But in other All-Star news, Damian Lillard has committed to the three-point contest. Oh yeah, so he's added another three-point shooter. So this three-point contest that some people consider the best event that the All-Star Week brings, because a lot of people feel like the All-Star Game itself isn't that exciting. And obviously the Rising Stars Challenge and everything like that, it's a good night, but nobody ever talks about that night in terms of regard, because you have the Celebrity Game too and all of that. So obviously seeing Dollar Dame light it up from three-point, because we know how hot he can get. You know, he's definitely somebody you have to watch out for that potentially could win that game and, you know, become and win, become and win that three-point competition. Do not be surprised. You could definitely see it happening. Now, also, Aaron Gordon has committed to the dunk contest. Obviously, Aaron Gordon is one of the best dunkers we have in the game. So him committing to this contest helps improve the field in the dunk contest. Him with Derrick Jones Jr. and Aaron Gordon. Obviously, you still don't have the full list of participants that are going to participate in the dunk contest, but they have some guys who, you know, this dunk contest definitely has potential. I mean, you can sit here and maybe say every year the dunk contest has potential to be good, but, you know, this one, especially this one, you feel like has potential to be a good dunk contest and really do something and make some things happen, you know, in my opinion, you know. Obviously people have felt like the quality of the dunk contest has gone down, you know, ever since the Zach LaVine Aaron Gordon matchup. Obviously, this is why it's like people are going to be very excited that Aaron Gordon is coming back because of that. Because obviously we know what Aaron Gordon has done and what he has meant to, you know, this contest before and the show he put on before. So, you know, it's going to be interesting to see what happens there, because it's going to be very interesting to see how it actually turns out being when it gets down to it at the end of the day. And, you know, obviously we want this All-Star Weekend to be as great as it possibly can be, as you want every All-Star Weekend to be. So we're going to have to see what kind of happens with that. Now, an announcement that the NBA made is that the cap, there's an expectation around the league that the cap and luxury tax was actually going to go down, and instead is going up $6 million from 109 to 115. So that's about $6 more million in cap space that you're going to have to use to spend on players. Since the contracts are so massive in the NBA now, I mean, you may be able to fit maybe a veteran minimum guy in there or something like that, but it really isn't going to create too much space. All this means is that it may just help a player maybe get a couple extra million more, maybe give you more space potentially to maybe sign a max player without getting someone up potentially. But I mean, it's also an interesting thing because obviously a lot of people consider this free agency class to just be a bunch of good players, not any great players, let's be honest, that have the ability, I guess, to, what you say, change a team. So, I think that's pretty interesting that, when teams are trying to make those final changes and cuts or whatever to their lineups and trying to figure out how the money works of every team, sometimes that extra $6 million can be the difference between you signing a guy and not being able to sign a guy. And obviously you always want to be able to sign the guy. So it's obviously important to have that extra $6 million involved. It's something that obviously the NBA, since they have so much money that enters the league now, that definitely helps in that regard. And, I think it just really is something that you'll have to see what happens in the long term. We're going to talk about two major snubs, and then we're going to talk about two major subs in the next segment. But for this segment, two snubs I want to talk about from the All-Star game that a lot of people may have gotten snubbed is Kyrie Irving and Paul George. Obviously, with Kyrie Irving, a lot of people feel like it's Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving, when he has played absolutely fantastic, top-of-the-line point guard play. And obviously, Paul George has also played very well since returning from his injury to start the season. I mean, obviously, in both situations, a lot of probably people feel like, well, the reason why this is the case is because obviously Kyrie missed a lot of games, and Paul George missed the first month and a couple of weeks of the season. So, a lot of people feel like, they missed too many games to really be able to get into the All-Star game where we can award a player who's kind of been healthy most of the year and played very well. But obviously those are big names because those are some of the biggest names we have in the NBA in Paul George and Kyrie Irving. I feel like, the league had to do what they had to do. They did what was best. That's how I honestly felt like they did. They did what was best. They did what they needed to do, and you can't hate them for that. I mean, the reserves are mainly determined off obviously fan vote is 50%, but Kyrie had a top three guard fan vote. So when you hear that and from what you see, what that really means is that the coaches and the players did not think Kyrie Irving was worthy of an All-Star spot. You cannot blame the fans. The fans still voted Kyrie top 3 in the guards in the Eastern Conference. He was actually second in voting behind Trae Young. But the players and the media did not feel like Kyrie Irving played enough games to make the All-Star team. So if there's anybody looking for, I don't know if Kyrie's going to look at his counterparts and say, wow, y'all didn't think I was good enough. But it's definitely something that has happened, and obviously it's shown in this voting. It's probably the same thing with Paul George. Paul George wasn't in the top 3, but he was in the top 5 in voting, I believe. And so obviously a lot of players and media did not give him that either. Because like I said, I think that's one of the reasons why he doesn't get in. And again, you can't, hate anybody for these decisions. This is decisions that these players maybe feel like is best in the long term moving forward. And, they just feel like this is what's best for everybody going into the next future of the league. I'm sure if Paul George played the entire year, he would have played a longer time. He probably would have made the All-Star game. And I'm sure even vice versa, if Kyrie Irving played more games, he would have made the All-Star game. I just think, obviously I think media and players take injuries into account and think, do we award a guy who has the name value, has numbers, but hasn't played in as many games? Or do we reward the player who may not have as great of numbers, but has been just as effective and has played in most of, if not all of the games? And I think a lot of people are going to value the amount of games you play than the amount of games that you don't play, which has been shown with these two guys. Now, next segment, when I talk about the 2 All-Star snubs. There's going to be more guys who have played well. One had injuries, and another one has been healthy the whole year and had one of his best stat lines, but still didn't get in. And I'm sure maybe some of y'all can think about who I'm talking about in this situation potentially, because obviously, it's not very hard to see who it is, but that's pretty much that. But coming up next, we're going to talk about Victor Oladipo returning for the first time in almost a year, I want to say, maybe a year potentially. And also, we're going to talk about the Knicks and the Grizzlies getting a little feisty at the end of the game, which raises the question of, do players and teams, do they run up the score? Should you run up the score? How disrespectful is that in the game? And obviously, I'm going to talk about the last 2 All-Star snubs that I think were snubbed, or a lot of people debate were snubbed. I'll say that. Coming up right here on the podcast.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last segment we talked about All-Star snubs. We talked about the 2 people, Damian Lillard for the 3-point competition and Aaron Gordon for the dunk contest joining in. We also talked about how the cap, we talked about how for the cap, they moved it up about $6 million from 109 to 115. So obviously there'll be more money into the market this offseason. $6 more million to be exact. So that could be the difference between you signing a good player and maybe missing out on a player. Different things like that. It just really depends. So, But now we're going to get some more news and notes around the league. Going to talk about Victor Oladipo coming back. Victor Oladipo, if you remember, tore his, I believe, quadricep in his thigh. Was out for the year. This was when Indiana was a top 3 seed, I believe. A lot of people wondered what Indiana would have been if Victor Oladipo was there. But Victor Oladipo, even this year, without him, the Indiana Pacers still have a game over 13 games over 500. They have been one of the best teams in terms of structure, I feel like, in the league that nobody talks about because they don't have that big number 1 star, but they do have an all-star in Sabonis, and Victor Oladipo has the potential of being a top-end all-star. They have a very well put together and built team, especially since they've added Michael Brogdon to hold it down, and a lot of other guys to stay competitive in the Eastern Conference, as they'll probably be a top 5 seed, in my opinion, in the Eastern Conference, and could be one of the teams to make some noise and make some things shake within, the conference and different things that have happened. Obviously, Victor Oladipo came back. He had a clutch shot to help Indiana win a game, and he dedicated that shot to Kobe and Gigi, obviously, putting a shout out to them, but Victor Oladipo looked good in his game back. He's a guy who a lot of people feel like is a B-plus guy, even though he almost did beat LeBron his final year in Cleveland, and he almost did beat a few other guys. People think that if he played in the Boston series last year, they would have beat the Boston Celtics, even though it was a sweep. People really think that it would have been that lopsided switch back in favor of Indiana, because of the reason why, if you watch the games, Boston really didn't play the best in the world. It's just they didn't have enough. Indiana just didn't have enough firepower to combat the dysfunction of Boston, which you would feel like if Oladipo was there, they'd have that extra firepower, that extra punch to combat Boston's, dysfunction. So that's definitely something that you definitely see and you definitely think is the case. I look at the fact of Victor Oladipo, I think he looked good. He looked fast. He looked very quick on his feet. I think he's a guy who definitely, like I said, if he gets back to what we knew of what Victor Oladipo was before, can definitely create some noise in the playoffs with the Indiana Pacers because of the talent that he possesses and what he can do. I definitely think that he can. Definitely. Because he has all the potential in the world to be that and do that, in my personal opinion. So you definitely look out. I'm glad he's back in the league. I like watching Victor Oladipo play. Underrated player in my opinion. Not a lot of people give him a lot of love, but I'm going to give him love on this podcast because we love us some Victor Oladipo on this podcast. The other night, the Knicks and Grizzlies got into it as Alfred Payton pushed down Jay Crowder, who was taking a three after the Memphis Grizzlies were going to beat the Knicks by at least 20, I think. And, Jay Crowder went up for a three, which Alfred Payton pushed him down aggressively and almost led to a whole scuffle and fight. Which raised the question after the game because Marcus Morris was just like, the game's over. Why are you trying to run up the score? Like, just dribble it out. Let's go home. And it raises the question of, is there such thing as raising the score? And is there such thing as, is it disrespectful to do that to an opponent? I mean, some people feel like this in football. A lot of people like to say, if you want to stop it, you need to actually stop it. And then I think some people feel like, well, if somebody in the NBA wants to pad a stat and shoot a three, stop it if you don't want them to shoot it. It shouldn't be something where it's like, okay, because it's kind of weird thinking, okay, last 24 seconds of a game, you're down by 20, and then the guy who's winning takes a three, and now all of a sudden you want to actually have a whole brawl with him on the court because of that. You think that's kind of extreme for something like that, but for some players, they think that's highly disrespectful if the game is over and you're still trying to add to the lead. So I think, that's an interesting, debate to have. I feel like personally, you just defend the shot. I don't feel like you need to push him aggressively to the ground. I can understand maybe, I don't know, if that's an unwritten rule in basketball, don't raise the score after you have a lead. Now, obviously, I guess you had to do what you had to do if you're out in Peyton, but, because it's like almost like it shows respect for your opponent. Like, okay, we win the game. There's no more, the possessions aren't going to count in terms of you winning this game anymore. Let's just kind of like whatever and just dribble it out and get to the end of the game, not play too hard, not wear each other out and stuff like that. And so I think that's kind of where the situation kind of lies and is kind of at right now. Obviously, like I said, we don't want any brawls on the floor. That's definitely not what we want. So I think this obviously was a big thing for the Knicks. Obviously, they haven't had a great year. And, obviously they probably just felt like that was real disrespectful of Jay Crowder to try to shoot a three, even when they were up by that many points, because they just feel like, well, what's the point? The game's over. Why are you continuing to shoot? Are you trying to pad your stats, et cetera, et cetera? So, that's just how I'm personally feeling about that. I honestly don't see an issue with it. I just feel like it didn't need to be taken to those lengths potentially, or I don't feel like it should have gotten to that point, in my personal opinion. But, every player feels like they have to defend their court or defend their honor of a team as a player. So if they feel like that's necessary, then I guess you can't argue with a guy about it. And then lastly, we're going to get to the last two snubs that I feel like people obviously talked about a lot. And the two snubs in this time we're going to talk about is Bradley Beal and Devin Booker. Bradley Beal is kind of the same situation with Paul George and Kyrie Irving. He missed a lot of games, but in the games he's played, he's averaged 27. And no player in All-Star history has averaged 27 and not made the All-Star team. So that's why I think a lot of people were shocked because of the fact that if you see his stat line, how does he not make the All-Star team? Because a lot of people are going to make the argument. Trae Young has 29 points and has the worst record in the league, or had the worst record in the league. Now they've the second worst record in the league. And he made the starters. But Bradley Beal has 27. His team's record is actually better than the Hawks. And yet, he didn't even make the reserves. But I think a lot of people are going to talk about just how, again, Bradley Beal was hurt. Trae missed a couple of games, but he wasn't hurt like Bradley Beal was hurt. And then in Devin Booker's situation, he's basically played the whole year and averaged 27. And I think that's just the case, honestly, with Devin Booker, is that there's just so many guards in the Western Conference. Even if you have a great season, you may not get an all-star bid for it. Like, you see the guards that they put. It was Russell, CP3. Honestly, if CP3 did not have the season that everybody didn't expect him to have, you probably would think Devin Booker would get in there. But, Damian Lillard, Russell Westbrook are your reserves. That's a pretty big, it's pretty big stars right there that you would tell me that you put Devin Booker over. And then also, the Suns not having a great record always affects it too, because the Suns are usually never, from a record perspective, a great team. So, obviously I think that hurts Devin Booker's case, even with the stat line he puts up, putting up almost 27, 28 a game, and not still getting an all-star bid himself. So obviously that's a little disappointing if you're the Phoenix Suns and Devin Booker. But coming up next, we're going to get some college basketball talk. We're going to talk about the week coming this weekend, big games in college basketball and the latest net rankings that have been released right here on the podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. And last segment, we talked about the last two snubs of Bradley Beal and Booker. We also talked about some news notes around the league. We talked about good old-fashioned Victor Oladipo getting back on the court, and the Knicks and Grizzlies getting a little feisty, raising the question of, respect on the court, should you run up the score, et cetera, et cetera. Now we're going to get into some college basketball games to look out for. You obviously know that on these podcast shows, I like to give y'all something to look forward to the weekend. If you're a college basketball fan, if you love it, here's your little, shindig and the abilities to see what's coming up available, what games you might want to tune into potentially this weekend. First game you want to tune into this weekend, Creighton and Villanova. 17-3 Villanova versus 16-6 Creighton. This is going to be at Villanova. Villanova, like I said, it's been quietly one of the better teams in the league, 8th in the nation right now. Creighton's played very well. They're on a 3-game winning streak. Villanova was on a 7-game winning streak, so you have teams here all on winning streaks. So you can say all of them are kind of hot right now coming into this game. Obviously Villanova just trying to do what they got to do. Obviously Creighton, this is big for them because obviously beating a good team like Villanova is going to help improve their resume. They already have a good record so far. This could also help them crack the top 25 next week if they get a game against Villanova this week too. So obviously that's something that they're going to definitely be trying to gun for the upset. The next big game is Louisville, 18-3. They've bounced back after that little slump they had, and they've won 7 straight. They're 8-2 in the last 10, going against the NC State. And obviously Louisville's expected to win this game. The reason this is a big game just because keeping the momentum going. It's going to be getting NC State. NC State's lost 2 in a row. NC State's 11-2 at home this year, so. This is usually the game where, a team like, Louisville can come into this hostile environment and lose. It'll be on ESPN at 2 o'clock, so obviously this is a big enough game that people feel like, hey, this might be an upset game. So you always want to have those games that you feel like potentially got upsets in them. It creates that much more of a excitement around it. Another big game is Providence and Butler. Butler, so far they've already won 1-0 this year over Providence, trying to sweep the season series. So we got Butler. Butler has rebounded after, losing lost 3 straight. Now they've lost 2 in a row, trying to get back on track. Keep it up against Providence. Providence obviously has lost 3 in a row. They're 5-5 in their last 10, so they really haven't played at the highest of levels recently. You expect Butler to come into this game and win this game handily because, you see the teams on paper, you just feel like Butler's the better team. But again, in college basketball, upsets can always happen. And as the Butler are playing at home, and as long as they play their game plan and do what they do best, they should be able to come out with a victory. Big game in ACC. Number 5, Florida State versus Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech is 14-7 on the year. They've lost 2 in a row, but they're 10-3 at home. Florida State has lost all their games on the road. They're 6-3 on the road, but 9-1 in their last 10. In their last game, they lost. So obviously they're coming off a loss. They're trying to bounce back. They're trying to come back with a W. Obviously, Virginia Tech, I don't expect them to be a slouch. So obviously I expect this game to be very competitive down the stretch, and they need to come out there and play their best basketball. Obviously Florida State, obviously these games you get upset in, you always want to bounce back. You want to bounce back and get to where you think you should be. Just, get back into winning, get your confidence back. As a team, sometimes losing these types of games can kind of mess with you a little bit. But, if they come back and bounce back from this game, I think they'll be fine in the long run. Baylor, obviously the number 1 team in the country, going against TCU's 13-7. Baylor has won 17 in a row. So if that tells you anything, they start the season 1-1. They're undefeated at home. They're 10-0 in their last 10. Obviously, TCU's lost 2 straight. They're 5-5 in their last 10. Obviously, the Big 12 is one of those conferences. You never know who could upset who. TCU is 13-7, so you don't want to sit here and think this is going to be an easy contest. But they are 1-4 on the road, so they have not been a very good road team at all this year. That's about 4 out of 7 of their losses came on the road. So obviously, they're going to have to play really good. TCU is one of the better passing teams in the league. They're 24th in the country in assists, but at the same time, their point differential is only 6 with 1-on-1. So obviously they're usually the games are decided by 6 points, where Baylor is more dominant with about 14.1 points a game. Because when Baylor wins, they win dominantly. It's never like a super close game a lot of the time. They usually come out there and compete at a high level and win the way they're supposed to win. Kansas and Texas Tech is the next matchup I think you should tune into at Allen Fieldhouse. Kansas has won 5 in a row, 8-2 in the last 10. They're 10-1 at home. And, Texas Tech's coming into this game after having that great game against Kentucky, losing in overtime, which knocked them out of the top 10. Then after that, winning the last game they played in, so everybody get back on the winning track. So obviously, with what we know, Texas Tech was just a ranked team. So we know that this team can play against some of the better teams in the country. Like I said, there may be a debate they should have beat Kentucky. So Kansas better look out. Texas Tech is looking to get that win back. If they win this game, they'll definitely be back in the top 25 if they were able to beat a team like Kentucky. I mean, not Kentucky, but Kansas. So Kansas has to be on their A game in this game, because Texas Tech is also one of the better teams in the country, and they're going to do what they got to do out there to win a championship at the end of the season. So, number 25, Rutgers, 16-5 versus 12-8, Michigan. Michigan has fallen off a cliff recently after starting the season so great. Now they're 12-8 in the year. They won their last game. They're 10-3 at home, and Rutgers is 1-4 on the road. So even though they're 16-5 on the season, they have had their least success on the road. So Michigan is in great position to get a win this year, a big win. Because their tournament hopes are kind of riding on a little bit of a thin line because of the fact that they lost a game like that. So and they've lost the games they've lost. So I think it's gonna be important that Michigan bounces back to help improve their tournament stocking and rankings in the future. Obviously, the big game is Auburn and Kentucky. Obviously, Sumiak and Auburn. Auburn has kind of fallen off a little bit, but they've won 3 in a row, and they're undefeated at home. Most of their losses came on the road. Kentucky is 16-4. They're 30-2 on the road. They've won 4 straight, so both teams are coming in here 8-2 the last 10, pretty much on the same momentum scale. I think this will be a great game. Auburn started the season out undefeated, I believe, and now they lost some games, but they bounced back. And listen, this is the game that everybody wants to see. It's going to be 6 o'clock on ESPN, and you don't want to miss a game like this because obviously this is one of the best games that the NCAA can give you. But just to give y'all a little update on the net rankings, to give y'all the latest breakdown and who's the top 10. Number 1 is still San Diego State, undefeated, 21-0 from the Mountain West Conference. They're number 1 still in this poll. Number 2, Baylor. You always expect the number 1 team in the AP poll to always at least be in the top 2 of this poll. They're number 2 in the net rankings. Number 3, Gonzaga. Obviously, they're just winning. They've only lost 1 game all year. They're just doing what they do on a daily basis. Kansas is number 4. Like I said, they play very well. Going through that little stretch, even losing some of their better players, they play very well. Number 5, Dayton. The team you walk out for before the season started, 19-2 in the year. Really good team. Have an All-Pro out there in terms of potential NBA draft pick in the top 5. Number 6, Duke. Duke, obviously, I have that upset loss, but they were, they've pretty much still played a good season. They've only lost 3 games. You can't really knock them down too far. Number 7, after being number 8, was Michigan State. They moved back up, winning some key games. Number 8, from number 9 last time was Butler. Big East, they've played well after losing a couple of games, but bouncing back, winning some games. And number 9, West Virginia. Obviously, West Virginia lost the game, so they're trying to bounce back from that. West Virginia is obviously one of the better teams in the country in the Big 12. So, obviously they're going to try to get back on track. And then number 10, Louisville. Louisville bounces back into the top 10 at 18-3, ending out the end of the net rankings. But coming up next, I'm going to talk about ownership in basketball, about some owners that I think are really good and some owners that could use some work or need to sell the team. Obviously, if you know what I'm talking about, the situation that involved the Knicks owner James Dolan. And also we're going to talk about the Mavs and the Grizzlies potentially hooking up on an Andre Iguodala trade coming up next.
Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last segment, we talked about college basketball, big games this weekend, and the latest top 10 net ranking. Now we're going to get into some talk, I think. This past week, James Dolan singled out a teenager who was telling and chanting, "Sell the team," which obviously isn't a good look. If you're aware of the Knicks situation, a lot of people, even Knicks fans, do not like James Dolan. They feel like he has been the reason why they have been so mediocre to bad in the last, almost since Carmelo was there. And they feel like he does not know how to run this team, and that he involves himself into personnel decisions and decisions that involve key players, which has made the Knicks a more unattractive destination for free agents. And so a lot of people feel like, basically it's not a good look. And a lot of people wanted James Dolan to sell the team to someone who actually who actually knows what they're doing, lets the people work that he hires, and builds the team the right way. And this kind of raises a question of what's good ownership, in my opinion, and what's bad ownership. To me, good ownership is an owner who does all the little things to make sure that his office, his staff, and his players are at the top of their game potentially at all times. One example is the Atlanta Hawks. A couple of years, the Atlanta Hawks had to sell the team to, I think it was Tony Resler, and I can't remember the woman's name, but she's also became an owner of the team. And they automatically, they hired their staff, they let the coach, they hired the GM, they let the GM pick players, and they put a lot of money into building new facilities and upgrading the arena, and basically doing all those things to help provide the best experience for the players, but for the fans and for the staff. I feel like a good owner, they make sure that they accommodate everybody, because remember, it's not only their job to get ticket sales and people to come to the games by giving them something that people want to go to and a product that they want to see, but it's also important that they hire the right people and they let them work. Usually owners are not experts on their own team. Like, listen, an owner of a Fortune 500 company that owns an NBA team, even if he watches basketball, usually, since they're so invested in their company, they don't know it to the deepness where they can literally be the GM and actually be able to help pick and see who we should bring in and how we should build this team. But they can have final say, because obviously when you make these big decisions, you want to talk to, hey, this is what we think is best to get us in the right direction. And then if you could sell the owner on it, then he'll approve it. A bad owner to me is someone who tries to include themselves in all decisions, personnel, and staff. So, and obviously since they're the big kahuna, they're always going to get what they want. And even for the detriment of the team. Obviously a situation that you may feel like is James Dolan. Obviously, like I said, there's been a lot of decisions that he's made that haven't been the best decisions. Unrealistic expectations. Other things like that. Not necessarily this is an example of a bad owner, but this is maybe something that some people consider a bad ownership decision. Obviously in the NFL with Tom Brady and Robert Kraft not wanting to let Brady go and telling Bill Belichick to trade Jimmy Garoppolo. You never really want, if you're a coach or a GM, the owner imputing yourself in decisions, because like I said, you hired me to make these decisions, and then when you have to tell me what to do or what decisions to make or what trades to make, it makes me feel like you think I can't do my job correctly, and you don't want to alienate your staff, your coaches, your team players. And you also want to give the players the best facilities and the best treatment they can get so they can be successful. Some players and coaches do not do that. We've heard stories that come out of Phoenix. The owner hasn't always been the best when it comes to maybe how he views how this team should be. Owners obviously not ownership sometimes isn't even being interactive with the team itself, but more just who they hire. They hire people who aren't clearly ready for the job, aren't experienced, or have a bad track record, and yet they are able to get sold on whatever they're saying to get them to be hired, which could again be to the detriment of the team, because now you may be bringing in somebody whose direction and his idea, even though it may sound new or fresh or different, isn't for what the team is, whoever the team is that is being owned, best for that team. You have to market yourself to a certain audience, and you don't want to mess things up. So, it's very important, teams that have good ownership are teams that are always structurally great. And the NBA, the Spurs are a great example of that. That's why they've been so good for years. They've had great ownership for years. That's why they've always been consistently one of the best teams in the league. Obviously they've had a great stretcher at head coach with Greg Popovich being there forever. They've done a lot of things well. That's why a lot of people want to pick people off the Spurs staff, because they always have a lot of smart guys who's learning under the best people, who's in the best structure. And you would feel like a coach that comes from good structure with no good structure and want to provide that good structure for the team that you hire. If you're an owner, you hire them to your team. So obviously that's something that is relevant and big in this situation. I think that, you just want to make sure that ownership never oversteps their boundaries, but at the same time puts things and places in place so the team, the city, and the organization can be successful, because that's what the owner's job is. And remember, there's a lot of teams that have a lot of co-owners, and I'm sure some co-owners might try to get in there and try to give their 2 cents on what they should do. Because, even though they may not be the majority owner, they may have an input that they can maybe provide that may be a different view than from just the one owner, you know? Because like I said, good ownership and then having a good front office and then having a good coaching staff, you know, all that can lead to success. You know, and that's what you want. That's what the type of success that you want. But also, before we go, I just want to bring up the Dallas Mavericks. Obviously, you know, they've been looking for some talent to be added to their team. And obviously, if you know about the Grizzlies situation with Andre Iguodala, they're basically trying to trade Andre Iguodala to a team. They think he should be traded by the deadline. And that the Dallas Mavericks are looked at as a fallback plan for the Memphis Grizzlies if maybe deals with the Lakers or with the Clippers don't tend to work out. You know, they can potentially perhaps do something with that. I think that, you know, Iguodala wants to go to a championship team, but at the same time, Memphis could make the playoffs. You know, but so, you know, it's going to be interesting. I would think Iguodala would play. I mean, he could still make the playoffs with the team. I mean, could it potentially be a buyout situation? You know, but if he gets traded to the Mavericks, I think that would be a good deal for him. Even though we may not consider Dallas a championship team, they're a team that could definitely make a run. So maybe potentially could be a championship team. We don't know. You don't want to say no or never, but, you know, potentially if they got Andre Iguodala, you don't know what can happen. But that's all I got for you today on the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Please don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment. Also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you and have a good day.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.